Hi guys, right, I'm Cassie, or otherwise known as Mama Cass, and I'm coming today to talk to you about my story, my crazy autoimmune me story, how it all happened. I've had to write some bits down because my memory is completely shot from fog, fibro fog, whatever you want to call it, but my brain doesn't quite work the way I'd like it to anymore, so I have to write a few bits down, make sure I get out all my information to you guys. Excuse the state of me I am. I know I'm a physical wreck of a human being, but my story needs telling. I've never been a fan of coming on camera, but I'm doing this for other people out there that might be going through the same things that I've been through for the last couple of years. I want to reach out and touch base with others who understand and who I can understand. So here's my story. I believe it started way back when I was born. I was tiny and I suffered some brain damage. My mum had got a blood clot and it went through her lung and heart while I was being born. And I believe everything's connected. I think that, you know, if I hadn't have been born that way, I was like a sickly child. I think it was all connected. It should have been picked up a long time ago, really. But my parents always tried to encourage me to be as normal as possible. What I couldn't do, they taught me how to achieve in spite of my disabilities. So I suppose when I became physically disabled, I fought against it for a long time. As a single parent, I was on my own, so I didn't have any choice but to try and do everything, and being physically incapable is not an easy situation for anyone. Anyway, back to the story. I'm pretty sure that I had the RA. I was never tested or diagnosed with it. I did have several blasé conditions that had been sort of diagnosed over the years and never really investigated further. They had said that I'd had osteoarthritis, carpal tunnel syndrome, they called it gardener's knee because I was a gardener at one point, housewife's hands, and you know, it was always just sort of here's a packet of pills, go away. There was never a blood test. There was never any attempt to find out what was really going on with me. I think I'd had a twisted spine since I was young, so I'd always sort of had quite a lot of pain, and I'd been used to quite a lot of pain. So I think a lot of things were just not noticed that should have been. I had carpal tunnel for like 20 years. It started when I was just 19 and pregnant, and that had been an issue for me for quite some time, and it had progressively got worse to the point that I couldn't brush hair, I couldn't butter toast in the morning, my hands were completely useless, and I had the surgery on my right hand, as you can see the scar there. I had that in 2011. Even that wasn't a simple surgery as much as it was supposed to be. And afterwards my hand was still very painful. It took a long time to recover. I got several infections. By the time I did recover, I was still suffering. I was still getting a lot of pain in my hand. The feeling of carpal tunnel, where it was compressed nerves, which is like a numb, tingling nerve pain feeling, that was lessened. But there was different pain that was there that I was aware of in my other hand as well, that I'd assumed was always carpal tunnel, and I now realise that it was actually RA. So after the carpal tunnel surgery, I realised there was more to my hand issues, and it turns out much more. In 2012, I went on to start a university degree. I'd had this idea that by the age of 40, I was going to be fully qualified, and hopefully be a counsellor. Excuse me, need a cup of tea. I wanted to be a counsellor. I'd done health and social care and psychology in my first year, which I did complete, thank God. I mean, it was so hard work. I really didn't know what I was taking on. I was also fostering a extra child at the time. And again, as I say, I was a single mum to 4 children. I was determined that I was going to be able to support my family myself, and that I would make something out of my life with this university degree, and I really put myself under a hell of a lot of pressure to do it. And I actually loved it. But in the first week, my operation for my gallbladder surgery, which had been an issue for about 6 months after the carpal tunnel surgery, it took me about 6 months to heal from that, and then about 6 months long I was having gall attacks out of the blue. I'd never had one before. I had one, and then after that it started happening like on a daily basis. If I ate, I was having a gall attack, to the point where I was taking myself to the hospital because of it. And I'm not the sort of person that would go to the hospital for anything. I wouldn't go to the doctors. But you know what a gall attack is like. If you've ever had gall issues, oh my God, it was painful and it was awful. And so I had the first week of my university degree, I had the surgery, which had been all planned, and I'd been begging for this 6 months. I'd been begging for them to operate and remove my gallbladder. And they kept saying, no, we need to do it as a planned surgery. It's so much safer as a planned surgery. Well, I went in for that first surgery. I should have took 45 minutes and been home by tea time, and it went seriously wrong. It should have been a simple routine operation, and I'd warned the doctors almost throughout the whole 6 months. I'd begged, please help me. I knew something was seriously wrong. I knew that I needed the surgery. They didn't listen to me, and I had to wait on a long waiting list for the surgery, by which time my gallbladder had been infected and swollen so long that it had glued itself into my liver. So it was stuck in my liver, and they had to operate, and they had to cut out a section of my liver at the same time as cutting out the gallbladder, which they did laparoscopically. And in that section of liver happened to be a main artery, which they had no option but to cut through, and I bled out on the table. And the surgeon told me that I had all of the surgeons on the ward that day working on me for several hours to keep me alive. Thank you to them for doing so, but I would have appreciated it if they had listened to me and my knowledge of my own body. I knew that I needed that surgery, and they didn't listen, and I do believe that it triggered the autoimmune breakdown that I then went on to exist with. I was meant to be home by dinner, and I came round the next day with drains and oxygen and all sorts going on. It was hard going as a single mum, just starting my university degree, and it took me a fair time to recover. It took me about a good 6 months to recover. It was a couple of weeks before I could even look after my children. Thank you to Joe and Dal, who were friends of mine at the time, that really stepped up and helped me with my children at the time. I don't think, like I say, it took me a fair time to recover, but I don't think I ever really did recover. After that, nothing was right. Nothing was right. Everything became a massive struggle. I think at this point, and the fact that a routine op had nearly killed me, it was clear there was something seriously going on with me. For several years, my health had been in decline. My childhood asthma, that had never been an issue, was constantly flaring up all the time. The carpal tunnel of 20 years had become crippling enough to the point of needing the surgery. The gallbladder, then along came a new surprise diagnosis. A year later, after the gallbladder surgery, everything always happens at the same time within a year. It's crazy, honestly. You wouldn't believe my story unless you actually witnessed it happening to me. So, the next year, and I'd completed my first year of uni, but then I took a break from it because I knew that I couldn't keep going the way I was. I really couldn't. I think my mental health was suffering as well. I'd gone back to the doctors. I'd been diagnosed with mental health issues for a good 8 years. I'd been dumped while I was pregnant with my youngest daughter by her father. He had left, and I had a baby that was there's 9 months and 3 weeks between my two youngest, and two older boys who I was constantly fighting for custody of with their father as well. Things were pretty rough, and I got diagnosed with antenatal and postnatal depression, and that went on to an overall diagnosis of anxiety and depression, severe anxiety and depression. I suffered with some agoraphobia, self-harming, suicidal tendencies at times. When my children weren't with me, they'd go for their access weekends. You know, I'd always been considered a mental health patient, and so every time I went to the doctors and said about my body hurts, this hurts, that hurts, everything's wrong, I was given antidepressants and offered pain pills and sent away. Nothing was ever looked into further, and I think I think as it turns out, most of those anxiety and mental health issues, I believe, are symptoms of the diseases that I've now been diagnosed with. And that, you know, that says a lot, really. I think doctors just want to give out prescriptions for antidepressants. Everyone's a mental health patient, but because we have mental health issues doesn't mean that we don't have physical health issues too. Anyway, I'm waffling. So I was struggling with swallowing, and I felt I had a lump growing in my throat here. If you see my neck, it's very swollen at the moment. I'm always swollen. But a lump had been growing up here. I couldn't swallow food properly, and I was struggling with my breathing a lot. So I went to the doctors, and of course, the doctor, I think, had just got to that point where he was like, she's just a neurotic woman and got lots of problems. Of course, we'll send her away with some antidepressants and stuff. I chose not to take a lot of pills throughout life because I could have been on them for my back all along, and they didn't really work, and I was young and I didn't believe that it was the right thing to do, to be on pharmaceuticals constantly. So I didn't take the pain pills, but I didn't feel I had a choice with the antidepressants. I would have lost custody of my children if I'd have said, like, no, I don't want to take antidepressants all my life. So I just took the pills and done what I had to do. When I would tell the doctor, you know, like when I complained about with my gallbladder, they didn't listen to me. And then they didn't really listen to me about my throat, but they sent me for a scan of my throat to check, because obviously they thinking like she's being neurotic and thinks that she's got cancer of the throat or something, which would have been a possibility, and I could have been worried about that at the time. I didn't know what was wrong with me, I just knew something was wrong with me. But they scanned my throat, and the sonographer, surprise, surprise, my thyroid is completely obliterated. Got a bit of fluff on my hat. My thyroid was obliterated, and the sonographer said, I suggest you should have had blood tests for your thyroid when you were suffering with these issues anyway. I suggest you go and get blood tests for thyroid and start some treatment like very soon, like now. They tested my blood that day, the doctors, and then called me back within a couple of hours. I'd never had such a quick call back, and it was a Friday, so they were like, get down here now, we need to get you on levo right now. I was basically comatose at this point. I was really struggling. I wasn't living a life at all, but I didn't know what was going on. Everyone was so angry with me and thought that I was just being lazy. The school was on at me that I wasn't getting the kids to school on time. How could I do that? I couldn't even brush my own hair, let alone my young daughter's hair. I couldn't butter toast. I couldn't do all of the things that they needed me to do. To put my foot down and drive was hurting me. I was tired all the time. You know, if you suffer with autoimmune diseases, Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, it's horrible. It really is quite horrible. I mean, there's enough people out there campaigning for the thyroid disease. I was very shocked by it. It runs in my family, but I didn't understand half of what it meant. The doctor at the time sat me down and he said to me, Cassie, you need to go and learn everything you can about this condition. He said, doctors don't know, they don't understand this condition because we don't get taught a lot about it. We get a basic knowledge of TSH. Like my blood test came back as my TSH was, I'm losing track of my story. My TSH was 97 and a T4 of 06,